Welcome, everyone, to Soulful Scriptures Every Day.
Yes.
It's so good to be with all of you, our brothers and sisters in Christ, as we jump into today's deep dive.
We've got a really intense one today.
We really do. Today we are exploring a deeply impactful piece from a Christian daily article, and it's something that directly challenges the faith and the physical safety of modern Christian believers.
Right. It's about what happens when living out your faith publicly hits a very sudden, very violent wall.
Exactly. But before we really get into the weeds here,
Yeah.
I need to set the scene for you, the listener.
Go for it.
So imagine you're standing in Hyde Park in London.
Okay.
Specifically, you're standing in Speaker's Corner. And, I mean, historically speaking, this is probably the most famous place in the world for free, unfettered speech.
Oh, absolutely. It's legendary.
Right, like Karl Marx spoke there, George Orwell wrote about it. It's supposed to be this sacred ground for debate. But our deep dive today asks a really dark question. What happens when that sacred ground of debate literally becomes a crime scene?
And that's exactly what the source material we're looking at today covers. We're unpacking a highly detailed article about a violent attack on a Christian preacher named Hatun Tash.
Yeah, right there at Speaker's Corner.
Exactly. And the article draws on accounts, video evidence, and statements from organizations like Christian Concern and the Christian Legal Center.
Now, before we jump into the timeline, we have a mandatory impartiality disclaimer.
Right. The rules of the road for the deep dive.
Exactly. Look, we are a Christian show, and we're looking at this from the perspective of our faith community. But the source material touches on some highly charged political and religious themes.
Very charged. I mean, it gets into critiques of Islam, police policies, massive cultural tensions.
Yeah. And because of that, we need to be clear. Neither of us are taking sides on the underlying political disputes today.
Right. Our mission here isn't to endorse the specific political viewpoints in the article.
No. Our mission is to impartially unpack the facts, the arguments, and the viewpoints exactly as the source presents them.
So you, the listener, can fully grasp the mechanics of what actually happened.
Right. We want to explore this massive tension between free speech, religious conviction, and public safety.
And ultimately, we want to reflect on how these events challenge us as modern believers trying to express our convictions in the public square.
So let's just get right into the facts of the attack from the source.
Okay, lay it out.
The incident happened on Sunday, July 25th. And the time is exact. It was 3:34 p.m.
Sunday afternoon, midsummer.
Right, broad daylight. Hatun Tash, who is 39 years old, is violently attacked.
And the details of the attacker are really specific in the reports.
Yeah, they are. The source says the attacker was a man wearing a black Islamic robe.
A full robe.
A full robe. He had a hood up, and he was wearing a face mask.
Which, I mean, if you think about it, in the middle of July, that's a very clear attempt to hide his identity.
Completely. He came prepared to not be recognized. And the attack itself was incredibly brutal.
The reports say he delivered a series of violent stabs.
Yes, and he wasn't just slashing wildly. He aimed directly for Hatun's throat.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, her throat and her body. She ended up with defensive wounds all over her face and her hands from trying to block the knife.
That is just horrifying.
It is. And then he just discards the knife right there on the ground and flees.
And this is where the source really highlights this shocking contrast. I mean, we're talking about broad daylight in Great Britain.
Right.
At Speaker's Corner, an environment that is historically entirely dedicated to the peaceful clash of ideas. I mean, it can get loud, sure, but it's supposed to be peaceful.
Yeah, it's like the ultimate physical comment section of the real world.
That's a great way to put it.
It's a place designed to absorb verbal conflict, so people can yell at each other instead of hitting each other.
Right.
But, okay, let's unpack this. How does introducing physical violence, like a literal knife attack, completely shatter the social contract of a space built on words?
Well, it destroys the basic assumption of safety. The moment a blade comes out, it's no longer a debate. The rules of engagement just vanish.
And there's a crucial detail from the source about what Hatun was actually doing right before the attack.
Right, because people might assume she was yelling through a megaphone or something.
Exactly. But she wasn't. Just moments before the stabbing, she was not preaching at all.
She was just having a conversation, right?
Yeah, she was quietly speaking to another member of the public. And this is key, she was wearing a Charlie Hebdo t-shirt.
Ah, and that is a massively potent visual symbol.
It really is. It carries so much cultural and religious baggage.
And the source uses that specific detail to highlight the targeted nature of this attack.
How so?
Well, it shows it wasn't just a debate that got out of hand. It was premeditated. The attacker saw who she was, saw what she represented with that shirt, and made a deliberate strike.
Right, it was an assassination attempt based on her identity and her message, which means we really need to look at who Hatun Tash is.
Absolutely. Her background is completely central to understanding the motive here.
So the source details that Hatun is an ex-Muslim.
Okay.
She converted to Christianity, and she now serves as the director of a ministry called Defend Christ, Critique Islam, or DCCI.
And her regular activities, like her main focus involves going to Speaker's Corner to actively critique and debate the Quran.
Right, she is very public and very vocal about her conversion and her critiques.
And the article zeroes in on a key theological explanation for why she was targeted.
Yeah, the concept of apostasy.
Exactly. In certain Islamic frameworks, converting from Islam is deemed apostasy. And the text explicitly states that according to Sharia law, this act deserves the death penalty.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for you, the listener. I mean, think about this.
It's a lot to wrap your head around.
It is. If Hatun knows the severe penalties that her background and her actions invite under Sharia law,
Which she definitely does.
right, what does her continued presence at Speaker's Corner tell us about the strength of her conviction?
I mean, it tells us her faith is stronger than her fear of death. It's that simple.
It's incredible. And it really frames this whole question of how extreme the challenges are for modern believers in the public square.
Yeah, the physical stakes for deeply held faith can be literally life or death, even in a Western democracy.
And Hatun's own words after the attack are so revealing. She had to get stitches for the wounds on her face and hands, right?
Yeah, she was treated at the hospital.
And afterward, she puts out this statement where she says she is, quote, upset and disturbed.
Which is an understatement, honestly.
Completely. But then she says she started asking herself if she did anything wrong.
Wow, she's second-guessing herself after being stabbed.
Well, she concludes she didn't. She asserts very firmly that she broke no British laws. She incited no hate. She says she merely wanted to question Islam, to debate, and to share Jesus Christ.
And that right there is the core clash of expectations.
What do you mean?
Well, Hatun is operating under the Western democratic expectation of free speech. She says, you do not expect such things to happen in Great Britain.
Right, she expects the law to protect her right to speak.
Exactly. But the attacker was acting on an imported theological law, the punishment for apostasy.
He wasn't operating under British law at all.
No. He bypassed the democratic system entirely to act as an executioner for a religious code. It's a total collision of worldviews.
And that collision brings us to what might be the most frustrating part of this entire deep dive.
The police response.
Yes. The allegations of police paralysis in the source are just stunning.
They really are. Let's look at the immediate aftermath and the attacker's escape.
Okay, so the attack happens. And one of the most surprising details in the article is that a police car appeared almost immediately.
Like right as it was happening or just seconds after?
Right. But despite being right there, the police completely failed to catch or detain the attacker.
He just slipped away in a park in broad daylight.
It's mind-boggling. And now Counter-terrorism is investigating, and they're having to appeal to the public for video evidence.
Because they missed him on the scene.
Yeah. And Hatun's accusation against law enforcement is incredibly heavy.
She does not mince words.
No, she says, quote, police inaction has led to what happened to me.
That is a massive claim to make against the police.
She points out that the attacker wasn't even afraid of them. He carried out a stabbing, essentially right in front of a police car.
And she offers a very specific reason for why she thinks the police are failing to act.
Right, the Islamophobia factor.
Let's unpack that, because Hatun claims that we live in a society where police actively avoid arresting Muslims for fear of being labeled Islamophobic.
She actually says it's heartbreaking that society has reached this point.
It's a critical assertion in the source material. It suggests a complete shift in law enforcement priorities.
How so? Like moving away from just stopping crime.
Exactly. The claim is that their primary directive has shifted from public safety to reputation management.
Wow. So they're more worried about PR and political correctness than stopping a knife attack.
That's the argument. And if that's true, it creates this incredibly dangerous vacuum where violence can just occur completely unchecked.
So what does this all mean for the average citizen, like you listening right now?
It's a scary thought.
It is. If the source's claim is accurate, How does a society even function when the enforcers of the law are paralyzed by the fear of social or political backlash?
It can't function, at least not as a free society. The mob takes over.
And the crazy thing is the article points out that this stabbing wasn't just some isolated out-of-the-blue event.
No, not at all. There's a huge lead up to this.
The source outlines a long history of escalating threats at Speaker's Corner.
It dates back to September 2020, almost a year before the stabbing.
Yeah, the timeline is awful. It talks about footage of threatening Islamic mobs surrounding Hatun.
Shouting death threats at her?
Death threats, yes, and actual physical violence. Instances of her being slapped, punched in the face, and knocked to the ground by various men in the park.
So the stabbing was really just the climax of a pattern that the police had allowed to build up over months.
Exactly. And because of that history, the Christian Legal Center and the Free Speech Union were already involved.
Right, they had already taken legal action on her behalf.
Yeah, the expert source details that they had filed a pre-action letter for damages with the London Metropolitan Police.
For those who don't know, a pre-action letter is basically the step right before a massive lawsuit. It's putting the police on formal notice.
And the charges in that letter are severe. They list assault, false arrest, false imprisonment, and harassment.
And wait, those charges of false arrest, those aren't against the men attacking her.
No. That is the most counterintuitive part of this whole history.
It's unbelievable.
Instead of arresting the men who were assaulting her on video, the police previously arrested Hatun.
They arrested the victim.
Yes. They detained her overnight in a cell, and they humiliatingly searched her belongings in public.
Okay, we have to talk about the concept of the heckler's veto here because that's exactly what's happening.
Please explain that, because treating the victim like the criminal makes zero sense to me.
Well, think of the heckler's veto like this. It's when the police decide that controlling an angry mob is too difficult.
Right.
So instead of protecting the person speaking lawfully, they just remove the speaker to appease the mob and make the problem go away.
Oh, wow. It's like treating the symptom instead of the disease.
Exactly.
I mean, it's removing the person speaking because it requires less paperwork than dispersing an angry, potentially violent crowd.
It's the path of least resistance for law enforcement.
But it fundamentally penalizes the victim. It rewards the mob for being violent.
Which connects perfectly to what Hatun said in the article. She stated that the police historically found it, quote, easier to remove me than deal with people intimidating and threatening me.
That sets such a dangerous precedent.
It really does. It means that mob intimidation successfully dictates who gets to exercise their rights in public.
If you're loud enough and violent enough, the police will just do your bidding and remove your target.
Exactly. And the source brings in some broader cultural connections here to show this isn't just an isolated issue at one park.
Yeah, they connect this directly to the Batley Grammar School teacher.
Right. That was a huge story in the UK.
It was. This was a teacher who was forced into hiding, literally fearing for his life, after showing a Charlie Hebdo cartoon to his pupils during a lesson.
And the source material links these two events deliberately.
Hatun wearing the Charlie Hebdo shirt, and the teacher showing the cartoon.
Exactly. They use this to illustrate a much wider societal pattern.
A pattern of intimidation overriding free expression, right?
Yes. The threat of violence is causing widespread self-censorship. People are terrified.
And that leads to this incredibly powerful quote from Andrea Williams, the chief executive of the Christian Legal Center.
This is probably the boldest claim in the entire article.
It really is. She says, quote, Sharia law is being implemented there by the back door.
Let's unpack the mechanics of that claim because it's heavy.
Yeah, what does she mean by the back door?
Well, the source is arguing that the UK government obviously hasn't officially adopted Sharia law. It's not on the books.
Right, Parliament hasn't made apostasy a crime.
But if a mob can use violence and intimidation to silence someone who commits apostasy.
And the police do nothing to stop it.
Exactly. If the police fail to act, or if they arrest the victim instead, then those religious laws are functionally governing the public square anyway.
It's de facto law.
Yes. The mob becomes the actual police force of that space.
Man, that is chilling. It means the written law doesn't matter if the police refuse to enforce it.
And that brings us to the ultimate stakes for modern faith and free speech.
Andrea Williams gives this final warning in the text. If Hatun is silenced by violence at Speaker's Corner, then we are all silenced.
It's the domino effect.
It really forces you to reflect on what this means for believers today.
Or really advocates of any deeply held worldview.
Right. If the literal embodiment of Freedom Speaker's Corner falls to violence, how fragile is our right to public conviction?
Extremely fragile. It only exists as long as it's defended.
So let's synthesize what we've covered today.
We've gone from the visceral shock of a stabbing in broad daylight in Hyde Park,
To the complex allegations of police paralysis and political correctness.
down through the history of escalating mob violence and the heckler's veto.
And finally, to the chilling implications for free speech and modern religious conviction.
It's a lot to process, but I want to remind you, the listener, why this matters so much.
Yeah, this isn't just a story about one woman far away.
No, while this focuses on Hatun Tash and one specific park in London, the underlying questions affect everyone.
Questions about who really controls the public square.
Exactly. Is it the rule of law, or is it the loudest, most aggressive voices?
And that leaves me with a final, lingering thought for you to ponder on your own.
What's that?
Well, if the physical public square, places like Speaker's Corner, becomes too dangerous for controversial, deeply held speech because of the threat of violence,
Right.
and if the digital public square, our social media platforms, is increasingly moderated and shut down by corporate algorithms,
Oh, that's a great point.
where does true, unfiltered, and safe debate actually live in our modern world?
That is the big question. If you can't speak in the park and you can't speak online, where do you go?
Exactly. Think about that as you go through your week. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive on soulful scriptures every day.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
God bless, and we'll see you next time.